In Sheila Martindale's Eden in the Fall, the author links actions taking place in the classical story of the fall of men with the different meanings of the seasons of the year. Seasons are a cycle of birth and death of nature, just like the birth and the fall of men. In class, we talked about the origins of words we use and see every day and often don't know the origins, like the days of the week in English. But have you ever wondered about the etymology of the names of the seasons? Well, did you know that spring comes from the 14th century Englishman that used to call it springing time? Summer does in fact mean together as one. In Proto-Indo-European, which was a language spoken before Jesus Christ was even born. Anyways, fall comes from Great Britain, where they said it was the season of the fall of leaves, logically. As simple as that. Finally, winter comes from the Proto-Germanic white/wet. But these seasons have melted into our culture and now often symbolize moods, temperatures, and nature. Martindale has managed to link the famous story of the fall of men from the Bible to the symbolic seasons. We can see her achievements by looking at the various devices she utilizes during her poem. So I'm going to read the poem first. Eden in the Fall. The first spring, earth spun out of chaos, beginnings. A time of saplings and birth, of venturing wobbly need through Eden's seedling meadows. At what season were apples ripe in paradise? Not in those early days of odd delight at all small growths. Nor even as summer reaches height, in the thickening of hedgerows, in long, slow days the air is still with heat. Eve, not in the springtime or summer of your life, not in your days of naive youth, nor even as you grew into maturity, you did not yearn in those years for a taste of knowledge or of truth. No. It must have been in autumn, your thoughts turning and falling among the leaves, when the apples, juicy crisps, red glowing, hung with tantalizing readiness within your reach. Yes, then. The first devices that I have found is during the couplet of venturing wobbly need through Eden's seedling meadows. This device describes spring in paradise. It describes Adam and Eve's first arrival at Eden. The couple was then young and did not know the place. So the metaphor, venturing wobbly need, shows that Adam and Eve are getting familiar to their surroundings, but are very young because their legs and probably the rest of their body is young and fragile. Also, the author demonstrates that she really wants spring to be associated with the beginning by making the imagery seedling meadows, which means that the fields of Eden is as young as a plant starting to grow. The third device that I have found is when the author says, Eve, not in the springtime or summer of your life, not in your days of naive youth, nor even as you grew in maturity. This couplet is the best symbolism Martindale has provided us in the poem. Springtime is symbol of youth and growth, while summer symbolizes maturity. Eve kind of follows the steps that a plant would follow each season. So another symbolism that we can make is that the growth and death of plants symbolizes the rise and fall of men in Eden. The next device is when it says your thoughts turning and falling among the leaves. The person that the author references to is Eve. This metaphor shows that the fragile mental state of Eve during autumn. Indeed, her thoughts are turning and falling among the leaves. But we know that during the seasons there are many, many falling leaves. So are there thoughts in the head of Eve. Her thoughts, not directly referenced in the poem, could be the thoughts of temptation to eat from the tree of knowledge after Satan tries to convince her to do so. Another device that I have found is when the author says, when the apples, juicy crisp, red glowing, hung with tantalizing readiness within your reach. This long, wonderful imagery describes how well the apples look tempting in the eyes of Eve. The apples of the tree of knowledge, although forbidden, are within hand's reach of Eve. Also, the author keeps seasonal accuracy during the poem because we know that it is during the fall that the apples are ripe and most plants are on Earth. The bonus device that I have for the poem is actually the title, Eden in the Fall. The author choice of words in the title installs a double interpretation. The first interpretation is that Martindale writes the answer of the question implicitly asked during the whole poem, which is, during which season did Eve eat the forbidden apple? Of course, we know it's fall. The second way to see the title is that the word fall could be seen as the verb to fall, literally. This would mean that the author wants to say that Eden will fall by the end of the poem, and that her poem explains the fall of men. Eden and the Fall's great literary devices demonstrate that seasons are a cycle of birth and death of nature, just like the birth and the fall of men. Adam and Eve are part of that nature, but what personally bewilders me is that Satan is at all referenced in the poem. It seems that either Eve was tempted by the symbolism of fall that we talked about, or either Martindale wants us to think that fall symbolizes Satan tempting Eve. The poem is good by itself, but it's when we look at other works that we see that Sheila Martindale's interpretation of the fall of men can be very different from others. The best work to compare it to is Paradise Lost by John Milton. For example, Martindale has emphasized more on the seasons in paradise and the symbolism behind them, while Milton focused on the chain of events that led to the fall of men in Satan's perspective. But what is most interesting with Paradise Lost and Eden in the Fall is that both interpretations could fit in one another's story. For example, John Milton's could have brung the symbolism of the seasons in Paradise Lost, and it could have represented fall as a time where men's disobedience is more prone to happen because this is when Satan strikes. Eve's temptation. Nevertheless, I would consider interesting to go to your nearest library and buy a copy of Paradise Lost if you like reading Sheila Martindale's Eden in the Fall.